Good evening, Littleton, and welcome to the Select Board meeting for March 8th, 2021. We will begin tonight's meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So tonight's meeting will begin with an organization and reading of the mail. It will be followed by department board updates and requests. We have the Transportation Advisory Council update, school department statement of interest regarding Shaker Lane School, the town clerk, the annual town report dedication, DPW complete streets application, and an update on the library construction project. That will be followed by public input and members' updates. At 7:15, we have a public hearing proposal to increase the building department fees. At 7:30, we have another public hearing regarding a request to purchase town-owned land on Manchester Drive, lots U14-101 and U14-102. At 7:50 p.m., we have a fiscal year 21 and 22 Fire Department budget update, a discussion regarding ambulance receipts. At 8 p.m., we have a host community agreement and the amendment to the host community agreement with Community Care Collective, Inc. At 8:15, we have the annual special town meeting warrant discussion. The town meeting presently is scheduled for May 3rd, 2021. We're going to have a discussion about the date and time and venue for that meeting, a presentation of proposed amendments to the stormwater bylaw and regulations, fiscal year 2022 capital budget, and inserting articles for the annual town meeting. At 8:45, we will have an update from the town administrator and the assistant town administrator. The first will be regarding the intermunicipal agreement IMA with Boxborough for LCTV, and the second will be the intermunicipal agreement with Boxborough for animal control. The third will be a Finance Committee Reserve Fund Policy discussion, and then a discussion regarding the TRED Trust Fund authorization of transfer to general fund. That will be followed by a review of the Select Board meeting minutes for our meeting that was held on February 22nd, 2021, and then we will be adjourning our meeting for this evening. So if you could, Mr. Ansaldi, start us off with a reading of the mail.
Sure, Madam Chair, one second. So the first thing is we were awarded a grant through Mass IT. It's a cybersecurity awareness training grant. This goes through different programs as far that Nancy will work with through IT on testing out vulnerabilities out there, which is an important issue nowadays with regards to security. The next thing is National
Madam
Grid.
Chair, could I ask a question?
Sure.
Sure.
So this is just for town employees?
This is anybody with a Littleton MA email address would probably be involved.
I was thinking like there could be contractors or other people outside the town who aren't town employees, but who have access to the systems that could, if they got compromised, it would be just as bad.
Yeah, what we're concerned about, Matthew, is really accessing our data. So if a contractor clicks a phishing scam on their own, then their business needs to worry about their IT programs. We're really worried about ours and making sure that we protect ours and train our staff to know what to click on, what not to click on.
Okay.
So National Grid, next thing National Grid is doing their annual vegetation maintenance and spraying on the sides of the road. This happens every year, so they're going to be starting that in the coming month. Joe, you want to do the next one about the LRRP grant? Since you worked on that, want to talk about that? Great
Sure,
job.
thanks. So the next item, we received notification from DHCD on becoming a LRRP community. What that means is that's part of the local rapid response program the state put out about a month and a half ago to assist communities, support local businesses. I had come in front of the board and got approval for submitting an application under this program for doing a Littleton Shop Local campaign, and we'll work with the EDC now that we have the consultants on board to then identify some dates with EDC to then start the project, engage local businesses with the intent of then developing and working forward on a local business directory to really help support and strengthen our ability to promote local businesses. So this isn't a dollar amount. It basically is contracting with the state and this company Beta Group who will assist us directly. So it'll be a great opportunity. Hopefully we can get things going. On Wednesday, I have a kickoff meeting with the state to go over what's required, and hopefully we'll be able to get going soon and meet with EDC to kick this off.
And two other things, Madam Chair. On Wednesday at 7 o'clock at night, Chief Panard is on a panel with the Acton, Boxborough, Maynard, Stowe police chiefs. And that's a League of Women Voters of Acton area, which services those communities, are having a Policing in Our Community forum. So that will be at 7 o'clock, and there is a link in the packet for those that want to view Chief Panard. And then on Wednesday morning, I will be with the Westford Business Association for the 7th annual town managers meeting. So I will be doing a presentation. I think I have 15 minutes to give them an update on what's going on in Littleton. So that's Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. And that's all I have for this evening. Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Insaldi. And I just want to comment on the Westford Business Association event this Wednesday morning. I've attended this event in the past, and it's extremely helpful and interesting to see what's going on in other surrounding communities. It is open to the public. If anyone is interested in attending, I strongly urge you to register. There's a link on the Town of Littleton website and on my select board page as well. You can also go to the Westford Business Association page and register for that event. But I strongly encourage anybody who's interested in what's happening, not only in the town of Littleton, but surrounding communities, to take the time, if you can, this Wednesday morning and attend that event. And also we want to, of course, be there to support Mr. Insaldi. Looking forward to seeing his attendance at that event and listening to his presentation. So thank you.
Thank you.
I figured he would appreciate us not being at the back of the
It
room.
really was, Paul.
Okay, I was going to do you that favor, but I'm sure you'll do fine.
Well, historically, it's held at the Juniper building in Westford, in the ballroom, and they have a large, incredibly big function room there. So at least this way it's Zoom. It's not going to probably be as nerve-wracking as it would be if we were all there in person. So kind of a little slack this year.
Yeah.
All right, excellent. Thank you. So now we are on to item number 2A, Transportation Advisory Council update.
I believe Gary LaCroix is probably waiting.
Gary's going to come in, and Joe, will he be able to share his screen so he can do his presentation?
Yes, he's in the process of joining as a panelist now, and once Gary's on, I'll just ask if anyone else is supposed to be joining.
Nope, I don't believe so.
Okay.
Gary, are you able to share your screen and do the presentation? Okay.
Sure, I will do that. So first off, my name is Gary LaCroix. I am the chair of the Littleton Transportation Advisory Council. I've been in that position since 2018. I live at 15 Mill Road. Previously, I was on the master plan and the master plan implementation committees as well. And I'm excited to talk to you about a development that's come up through transportation. I want to bring it to your attention and support. So let me bring it up on the screen. I know you were given a fact sheet ahead of time, and I've taken some of that information and put it into a PowerPoint just for ease of working through the information. Okay, so the Nashoba Regional Greenway. What is it? Well, we've defined, I'll get to explain how we got here in a minute, but first off, the region is pretty much the Route 2 corridor west of 128. And what's connected to here is that there's a number of rail trails in this region, the Nashoba River and Ayer, the Bruce Freeman, the Assabet River Rail Trail, the Mass Central, and the Minuteman Bikeway are all in this general region, but there is no designated safe, appropriate routes that connect these resources. And the initiative of the NRG is an attempt to fill the gap using the existing road network to create those connections. So this all started with one of the first things that the TAC did was to discuss some transportation initiatives we might want to take on. And one of them, and we all had ideas, and one of them was, gee, it would be nice if we could connect to the 3 rail trails that all go around Littleton, but aren't in Littleton. That was the genesis. And then we stumbled upon a resource that the MAPC had put together called a concept called the Landline, which had a map that showed how, that did the same exact thing. And so we took off on that idea. And since the idea is to connect to these rail trails, we approached Ayer and Acton in late 2019 with the idea. And when there's a good idea and people are enthusiastic about it, it kind of grows. And so what's happened is we connected with the author of the Landline concept, David Walzenheimer, out of MAPC, and he used his word of mouth, and it just grew. And so now there are 14 communities that are now engaged in this concept. And we've also got the engagement of MAPC, MRPC, because Harvard, Devens, and Ayer are in the Montechusett region, as well as MassBike and MADOT have also contributed and participated in some of our meetings. This map shows, and I know you can't read it, so I'm just going to basically hit the highlights of it. The map is a map that's been continually updated by MAPC for us, and we're continuing to work it, and so this is still a draft, but it does show how a potential network of what the road network could be that would connect to the different rail trails, as well as not just the rail trails. We want to connect to areas of commerce, town centers, not tourist, but area attractions, as well as mass transit with this network. And there are 14 towns, like I mentioned, that are all potentially interested and have been active in our discussions to date. And it's interesting how it coincides very, very closely with the Magic region of MAPC. So we have developed some goals for the NRG. I won't have you read all these, but pretty much it's the idea of sharing the road and developing this network and improving quality of life and connecting to the resources in this region. If you have any questions as I go, I know I'm zipping through this pretty quick, but I know I have a time sensitivity, so I want to get through it. But if you have any questions, and if you're not clear, please interrupt me. So where are we right now is that we're past the idea stage. There's enthusiasm for the proposal. And so now we want to translate that into some action. We've taken a few steps. We've developed, we have the draft route maps through the communities. We've developed a mission statement. We've developed a charter as to how this group would organize themselves and run meetings and have and assemble and how they would make decisions. And we have a Google Drive directory with information. The towns in the MRPC have already reached out to MRPC to get a technical assistance grant. And we are working with MAPC to put together a similar proposal to get technical assistance from MAPC. Right now, there's an open data call that expires next week as to requests for technical assistance request. So where we're looking for help are in 4 specific areas to help take this ad hoc group and migrate it to some kind of formal structure and help us run it. Support public education and outreach, which would include things like developing a website, putting together fact sheets, information that can be used for other towns to spread the word and get local support. Get also mapping assistance, continue to get mapping assistance from the MAPC, and establish what the priorities might be, ground truth the roots, and using the Mass DOT has a signage plan as to what the types of signs that would be for this kind of network. And so we wanted to develop a plan as to where those signs may be and what would be on those signs. These are all things that we think are doable within the next 1 to 2 years. So what I did, I want to tie it to the master plan. Part of an overwhelming theme in the master plan for transportation was to improve the ease of getting around and better connect the pieces with 7 safe and pleasant bike paths and walking paths and connecting to public transportation. And so there are some specific elements that are in the master plan that directly or indirectly are tied to this. One is better improving access to the MBTA commuter rail station, so that there's a better means to get there. And I know some actions are being taken right now on Foster Street to do that, but this would be an extension of that. Prepare a comprehensive trails plan. This was focusing on off-road, but I think this network is entitled, is intended to be not just for bicyclists, it's intended to be for pedestrians and cyclists. So this would be an extension of off-road trails as well as connecting it to the on-road trails. And number 7 talked about funding sources, and this type of idea is really nice because it doesn't really require a lot of funding. But when we do get funding, there's also the potential by doing this as a regional proposal, we're more likely to get funding for this kind of thing, since it's not just Littleton trying to do something, we're trying to do something that connects multiple communities. So where I'm looking for assistance is we have a technical assistance proposal that I sent to Anthony last week. Littleton has been identified as the lead community. That's because the idea originated in Littleton, but also, and I've been the most active person to be the Pied Piper with this initiative, but also because we're fairly central in the region. So we have a technical assistance proposal right now that we want to get support from the select board, so we can go forward with this. And other things that would be assistance would be just to continue to support the idea as we work with Chris Stoddard and other town officials to keep this initiative moving. And like I said, there's very little cost associated with this. We're not talking about building rail trails or anything like that. We're talking about probably road signage, road markings, and probably some public education associated with the route, and to answer any questions that may be. So that's. I know I was going to also talk about where we are with the Transportation Advisory Council as well, but I wanted to get this out first because of the exigent nature of where we are with the technical assistance. So I'm happy to answer any questions on this proposal.
Mr. Glady, did you have a question?
Well, yeah, I just kind of want to address two points. Certainly, I advocate support for the specific proposal with the landline. And what was the actual name you had for it? Is that the correct
Landline is the concept that MAPC
Right.
had. We're calling it the Nashoba Regional Greenway.
Okay, the NRG, that's right, yeah. Certainly, I hope the board will vote to endorse that project, but in a bigger context, as Gary just mentioned a moment ago, I'm the remaining member of the selectmen that's technically a participant in the advisory council. Gary is doing almost all the work. I mean, he does a great job of involving everybody who should be in the loop on that planning department. Certainly, Chris at the highway department, DPW, and I hope that continues to be an open channel there. Gary, let us know if it's not. But the making the reality out of the goals in the master plan for ease of transportation in town. Not just vehicle transportation, but as highlighted tonight, the bicycle and pedestrian transportation. Gary's keeping that moving forward, and we should support him in everything he's looking to do. I'd also throw an offer out to the board members. Initially, it was Chase and I who were appointees to the select board members in that committee. Chase was the lead, and I was his alternate, but he's no longer here. So, if any interested member would like. Please, I think we meet quarterly. Is that right, Gary? That's what the plan is right now?
Every 2 to 3 months based upon what we have on our
Okay.
plate.
At least quarterly then, right? Okay. But yeah, so I just want to put those two items out there, Madam Chair. One is to support fully this project. It's quick to say yes to anything that doesn't come with a big ticket ask attached to it. So that part's easy. But to applaud Gary specifically for his good work here and encourage another member of the board if they want to dive in, please do.
Thank you, Mr. Glavy. So I had actually stepped in Chase's place.
Okay.
But I admittedly have been lax in my attendance at these committee meetings. And at one point I had talked to Mr. Knox to see if he would be interested in taking my place. To echo your sentiments about Gary's role in keeping this committee productive and together, and it's a great committee, and I really miss those meetings, to be honest with you. Due to my work schedule, I'm just unable to attend. So I had talked to Mr. Knox at one point to see if he would have the bandwidth to step in, because I do think it's important to have a member of the select board regularly attending those meetings for many reasons. And I applaud Gary for bringing this to our attention, like bringing an update to us. It's something I think that we as a board need to be better at, is connecting with these committees that we appoint. So thank you, Gary, for doing that. Absolutely 100% support any of the initiatives that you're looking to us to support. I'm also chair of the Master Plan Implementation Committee. So this is very interesting to me to see this. We're actually going to be doing an update. We're preparing an update for town meeting this year, which is something that's never been done. We've put together a list of achievements and works in progress relative to the master plan, and the town of Littleton's really done a great job. And so we want to get that information out to the residents as well. So certainly applaud your efforts and your commitment to this committee. And thank you again for bringing us before us. So I'll now open it up to other members of the board. If Mr. Knox.
If I could, I'll certainly step in, Gary. Just let me know what I can do when the meetings are, and I'll be there.
Sure. Thank you.
As to this the program you just talked about, just so the public gets a better idea, are we just trying to designate certain roads where signage is going to go so it connects us to the other towns?
Pretty much, yes.
Okay. That was it. I just wanted to make sure that people knew that.
Now,
Okay, thank you.
on the network itself, there may need to be some modifications to how the road markings are laid out. For example, in terms of whether you keep a center line on there or shoulder, or the white lines on the sides or things like that, or you add share rows, those arrows you see like on Muscle Street, or other types of things. That's the kind of thing that we need to ground truth and discuss what it is we need to do on the roads that we're proposing to put in the network.
Madam
Thank
Chair,
you.
if I may.
Yep.
This is fantastic. I'm very impressed that you spearheaded this, and involved all these communities. And I, you know, as someone who rode my bike to the train station for 10 years, man, it was nerve wracking. Foster Street is just a terrifying ride. But, you know, I think this is a great opportunity for Littleton. I think it's going to only enhance the area. And you have my full support, obviously. If I think I overcommitted a bit on my boards and committees, but I'll volunteer as an alternate if Mr. Knox can't attend. And I would say that the last thing is you might want to get in touch with Littleton Conservation Trust, as they have a pretty encyclopedic knowledge of, you know, walking trails and routes around town. And they would be a great partner, both for volunteer help and possibly for funding.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. DeCoste?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Gary, thanks a lot. This is great. This is something that we have been looking at and working on for a long time, even beyond the shared streets aspect. This is something that I know that I brought up with Keith probably 5 or 6 years ago, to look at the gas line that runs along Route 2. That would be a great connection from Grimes Lane, right parallel to Route 2, all the way down into Acton to 27, and at some point somehow connecting to the Freeman Trail down there. So I think there's some opportunities even above and beyond what we're looking to do here with the ground proofing of the roads and you know how we share the roads. But I think there's some opportunity, to Matthew's point, with the Conservation Trust and finding out what other lands are available. You know, just down the street from me on the Boxborough line on Newtown Road, straight through to Foster Street to the train station. There's some opportunity with some public land, some land that's owned by Mass DOT, some land that's owned by the gas company, some land that's owned by the MBTA. So I think there's some opportunity for us to make some of those connections in spaces that we haven't necessarily looked at. I'll commit to reaching back out to Keith, because I know that he did bring some of this up to MAPC and to the Magic communities. And I'll commit to reaching out to Keith and finding out kind of where we were with connecting with National Grid. I think Selectman Glavy had asked some questions when National Grid came in, and we kind of held them to the fire a little bit. We raised some of these issues, and I think Mr. Glavy had raised some really good points at that point in time. So it might be a good reason for us to revisit with them. Certainly, you know, it'd be a good faith thing for them to help, whether it's resources or maps or what have you, that we might be able to incorporate into a plan like this. But first and foremost, thank you very much for all the time and effort that you put into it. And I think that this is certainly a step in the right direction. You drive down Route 2 and you see the flyover bridge that they're putting in over Route 2 just before the Rotary to continue the Freeman Trail down towards Nashoba Brook, and it's pretty impressive. I'd like to see that we are not too far behind the 8 ball, and you know, kind of catch up to some of these other communities. Ayer's certainly done a lot with their connection, and I think that the time has come. And thank you very much for kind of continuing to beat the drum, Gary.
Well, I do have high aspirations to doing something that's bigger, but bigger is harder. And this is obviously a little more easier to digest. And we already are very heavily used by the bicyclist community, who like this area and the Harvard area, and they know these roads. But to the uninformed, the real intent here is to have it build an app and have a road signage network that will let the bicyclist like myself, who's not a heavy duty avid bicyclist, just wants to go out there and have a nice time and know that there's a route that's a safe route, that's got the right signage on the roads and it's nice designated. And someone looked at this and has said, this is a good way for me to get to Harvard Center or to get to Concord Center or wherever. So it's such a low cost initiative that I think it just makes sense. And the enthusiasm has been really strong across all these communities. So really
knowing you as I do, I can't help but feel that your ultimate goal is to build a canal.
I'll tell anybody who's on my committee that I would love to see a right alongside our existing train tracks. If you did a rail trail right alongside our existing train tracks safely with barriers and things, you could connect to Ayer, South Acton, and West Concord, and connect to all 3 of those rail trails on a rail trail that's at grade. So that would be, I wish I had that idea 5 years ago before they put the second track in, because I think that would have been a great time to do it.
Well, the gas line is there too, Gary. So there is that opportunity. The gas line runs pretty close to parallel, but there are some some issues with wetlands, and so it's
Yep.
going to take some doing, but it's certainly, like I said, I'll reach out to Keith and find out where that was left,
Yep.
and I'll reconnect with you on that.
Like anything, small steps. So
Yep.
this is our
Baby
first step.
steps. Excellent, Gary. Thank you very much again. So, what do you need? Is there anything specific you need from the board this evening other than, oh, here we
Joe has
go.
his hand up.
Joe's got his hand up.
Oh, yeah,
Excellent.
but before I make the
Oh, I
motion,
didn't know we
get
had a
Joe
motion. I
first.
didn't see it in the packet.
No, I just did it on the fly.
Okay,
So
Should we hear
the
from Joe
reason-
first?
the reason why I was trying to get everyone's attention is mainly because Maren is on the call as well. We've already submitted technical assistance through the TAP for this program year. That's what our 40R project is. Can we submit a second project under this request?
Thanks for the question, Joe. If you don't mind, I'll take a few minutes to answer.
please.
Thank you. Yes, we can submit a second TAP application request if it's a part of a regional request. And I asked MAPC if they saw any problems with that, and they were happy to have Littleton be the lead on this regional application.
Okay, great. Thank you, Maren. So looks like we have a
Okay.
motion.
So yeah, even though we're already moving forward on this, we might as well formalize it with a motion here. I'll move that the select board authorize the town administrator to sign the MAPC Technical Assistance Program funding application for the Nashoba Regional Greenways project.
A second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Nordhaus,
Yes.
Mr. Glavy,
Yes?
Mr. Knox,
You're muted?
Yes.
Mr. DeCoste,
Mr. DeCoste is aye.
and Cindy Napoli is aye, and the motion is approved as written. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you again, Gary, and thank you, Maren, too. So,
Madam Chairwoman, I'm going to give an update on the TAC as well, because it's been a couple years, but I know you have a busy agenda, so I'll open up to you if you want me to give you a quick update, or you rather save that for another time.
you're here, so please go ahead. We can make adjustments.
Okay. So, I have not had a chance to brief the select board about the operations of the Transportation Advisory Council and whether it's doing what you guys are all looking for the Transportation Advisory Council to do. Broadly, since it is a group of, the goal of the Transportation Advisory Council is to have a clearinghouse, a forum by which the different boards and those committees that have an interest in transportation can collaborate and communicate. We have, as members, we have a person from the select board, the planning board, elder human services. I'm going to forget some people. Bicycle pedestrian and finance. And then we have 3 at-large positions. And the nature of that is, I know there was some reluctance to have another committee because we have a lot of committees in this town, but this was not really so much a committee, but basically everyone together meeting who are already on committees, plus I said, the 3 at-large members. I think it's my personal opinion. It's been effective as to be looking at transportation holistically and not just looking at it in the individual eaches that each of these boards might touch. We meet every 2 or 3 months. We get input from Ashley Shaheen, as well as Chris Stoddard, as well as Maren on items that relate to their work. We serve as, I know Maren uses me regularly as a point of contact for any transportation issues that I can then disseminate to those who are on our group. So I think we're doing, as a communication tool, I think we're being effective. We occasionally try to take on some initiatives, such as Ann Grace worked with us in the BPAC on the trail to the Cooper Farm Trail. I know that didn't get submitted, but that was an initiative that we identified as something we thought we should support. So I think we're not an advocacy group, or we're not an initiative group, but we're there just to communicate. I think we've been generally effective, but I don't know what your perspectives are. So I wanted to get that feedback from you guys as to what your thoughts are. And then the second thing was, I do have some concerns on the long-term viability of the group. And that has to do with the transient natures of the appointees are changing every year or two. So they don't have long-term, knowledge of how we operate and things. There's 2 at-large members, including myself. And this will not be an effective council if I walk away and this thing just dies. So you need to have some long-term things. So we have had a vacancy in the at-large position for a year now. I'd like to see that 3rd one filled, and I'd like to start building a continuity plan so that if I step back, like this initiative may be taking on a fair amount of my time. I'd like to see this be able to sustain itself. So that is a general concern I have.
Okay. Thank you, Gary, and that is a legitimate concern, certainly. Thank you for bringing it to the attention of the board and for the update. I think at this time, it's something we should definitely take a step back and take a look at. Sustainability of the committee is certainly an issue, a concern, like you said, with respect to turnover. And it's difficult when you have people, step out of a committee, others step into a committee. The turnover can sometimes stall initiatives. And to your point, if you step away for whatever reason that may be, it's certainly something that we don't want to see lose groundwork, lose momentum just with your absence. So we do need to have a succession plan, some sustainability and structure with this, a better structure with this committee. So let's take, thank you for bringing that up to the board. I'd like to take a step back and take a deeper look at what you just discussed with the board, and maybe we'll circle back with you and really kind of try to come up with a solution to the concerns you just raised, because they're legitimate concerns. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much. So we do have a public hearing at 7:15, but we still have a little bit more time. Do we have enough time, Mr. Insaldi, for item 2B?
Yes, Steve Mark is here, so I think he can be relatively quick. Joe, you letting Steve in? There he is.
Oh, sorry, had to unmute myself. Sorry about that.
Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Thank you for having me. Members of the Board of Selectmen, thank you. Do you want me to just get into this? So what you have before you, if you want me to share my screen with you, I can do that as well. This is a statement of interest for the Shaker Lane School. Now, this is identical to what the board approved last year. Really, what we're doing is we're just kind of hedging our bets. We are in communication with the MSBA, the Mass School Building Authority, on a possible inclusion of a Shaker Lane project into MSBA funding plan. That hasn't been approved yet. We're in current negotiations. We've sent them additional information. We had a meeting a month or so ago. Mr. Insaldi was part of that meeting with MSBA leadership and senior advisors to that board. So they are looking at the Shaker Lane project and the Shaker Lane School, but the decision to include that project or to partner with Littleton in funding that project has not been made at this point in time. So really what this vote is we're just hedging our bets. If Littleton is not selected this year to be included in an MSBA funding plan, we have to resubmit another statement of interest in the next year's cycle. And we need this vote in order to do that. And that's really what this is. It's the same statement of interest that we submitted last year. It's the same wording. It's the same language. Nothing has changed. The vote before you is the same word for word vote that you approved last year. The only thing that's different is the date on it. It was March 9th, I think, last year. It's March 8th, today's date this year. And that's really all this is we're just hedging our bets in case we are not selected this year, we can apply to enter that program for next year, and we have to have that vote for this. School committee will review this on Thursday night at school committee. I need both votes. And then once it happens, once they had those votes, once MSBA opens up that application process, which they have not done yet this year, once they open up that process, we can resubmit that statement of interest for the Shaker Lane School. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mark. Do we have any questions from the board? Mr. DeCoste?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Steve, thanks for being here tonight and for, I think it makes sense. The only question I have is relative to, I brought up the same question when we were talking about upgrading phone systems. If we're going to be looking at a full overhaul or a full replacement of any of the schools, do we want to look at putting money into them from a modernization standpoint? So if you can just kind of address that a little bit.
Good point. The Shaker Lane School that we're looking, the phone system that we're looking to replace, well, we've already done Shaker Lane School. So that phone system's already been upgraded. We did that a couple years ago. If we upgrade that school, it depends on where the architects go. That's not a system that we would probably upgrade. If the decision is to build a new school, obviously that's a different conversation. But I don't believe that if the decision is to renovate the Shaker Lane School, that the phone system would necessarily have to be part of that renovation because that is a new phone system. Did that answer your question, Chuck?
Yeah, it's not just the phone system. That was one example because it's kind of recent to us. But just I know elevators have been an issue, and I just
So we have a new elevator in there. We have been over the last, and we haven't done them for a couple of years, but we were on a 10-year plan that we replaced most of the original univentilators in the classrooms. So we did most of those. I think there's 2 or 3 still old existing from 1969 or 1968 univentilators in the classrooms. Those are actually running good, and we've been able to salvage parts from the ones we pulled out in order to keep those in good shape. We haven't done any major things over there. The roof is in decent shape. The boilers, we have our HVAC service contract on the boilers. So those are maintained and kept running. Again, those are 20 years old as well. So they're in good shape. We've done some repair projects. We've added, fixed some floors. We've added some mini split systems for air conditioning into the cafeteria at Shaker Lane School to address some of the heat issues that we have. But really, we haven't done major problems on that project in that building in a number of years.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. It seems pretty straightforward to me. So are we ready for a motion?
Yeah, there wasn't one presented in the packet. Anthony, do you have something?
Yeah, it was on page 2 of their, Paul. I can share it if you want.
No, I've got it there. No, I think I've it's kind of buried in the, let me see.
Yeah.
After
up
the
on the
priorities.
It's up on the screen, Paul, if it's that easy.
All right,
I can make it a little bigger.
Well, I got it right in front of me, but
Okay.
which paragraph are we talking about
They
here?
want the whole thing read. That's what happened last time.
So starting with having convened all the way
Yes.
down? Oh, God.
Yes. That's how they want it.
MSBA
Anyone
for you.
else want
Sorry
to be
about that.
That's all right, Steve, no harm. Having convened in an open meeting on March 8th, 2021, prior to the SOI submission closing date, the Select Board of the Town of Littleton, Mass, in accordance with its charter bylaws and ordinances, has voted to authorize the superintendent to submit, well, I should actually rephrase it. I move that the board vote to authorize the superintendent to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority the statement of interest form that will be submitted by no later than Friday, April 30th, 2021 for the Shaker Lane School located at 35 Shaker Lane, Littleton, Mass, which describes and explains the following deficiencies in the priority categories for which an application may be submitted to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future for MSBA application priorities as described below. Priority 5, replacement, renovation, or modernization of school facility systems such as roofs, windows, boilers, heating and ventilation systems to increase energy conservation and decrease energy-related costs in a school facility. The school needs modernization in regard to HVAC boilers and unit ventilator systems. There is a need to have additional insulation added to the building, especially the roofing system, to help prevent excessive heat on the second floor during summer months in June, when the temperature in the second floor classrooms can reach in the high 80s and low 90 degrees during school hours. Studies and review of window systems need to be performed to evaluate the long term of the window systems and whether newer system would help with building temperatures. Review and study of educational spaces would be warranted to determine optimal configurations of classroom and learning space to optimize learning environment and areas for all students. Priority 7, replacement of or addition to obsolete buildings in order to provide for a full range of programs consistent with state approved local requirements. Providing adequate spaces for students to meet and collaborate with staff, other students, peers, and teaching specialists will enhance their educational program and experiences, allowing them to meet district and state educational goals and program requirements. Having appropriate heating and cooling systems, modern lighting systems, and modernized learning spaces will provide students optimal learning environments where they can focus on instructional materials, programs, and teaching staff. And hereby further specifically acknowledging that by submitting this statement of interest form, the Massachusetts School Building Authority in no way guarantees the acceptance or approval of the application, the awarding of a grant, or any other funding commitment for the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or commits the city, town, or regional school district to filing an application for funding with the Massachusetts School Building Authority. So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste,
Coast is aye.
Mr. Glavy.
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus.
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye, and the motion is approved as written.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Have a good evening, everyone.
Thanks, you too. So it is now 7:16. We do have a public hearing scheduled at 7:15 regarding the increase in building department fees.
So there's Commissioner Mullen is on.
Good morning, Madam Chair.
Good morning. Do we have,
Are you in Hawaii?
I know, it's good evening, but that's okay. We still think it's morning here in Town Hall.
do we have a notice to read? We do.
I hope not.
Your poor Paul, he wants a break on that.
I know.
I don't see that, but I will make a motion to open. Oh, there is a meeting.
Yes, there is, yes.
All right, then, Madam Chair, if you want, I'll read that. The Select Board will hold a meeting on building department fees on Monday, March 8th, 2021 at 7:15 p.m. The purpose of the meeting is to consider proposed changes in building department fees due to COVID-19. Public attendance at the hearing is currently restricted. The public meeting will be held remotely via Zoom video conferencing. Details to be made public, made available on the Select Board agenda when posted a minimum of 48 hours prior to the board's March 8th, 2021 meeting. In addition, the public meeting can be viewed live on LCTV or online at the Littleton VOD address. Please feel free to contact the Select Board Town Administrator Office with any questions. Interested parties are encouraged to attend remotely or to submit written comments to the Littleton Town Administrator, 37 Shattuck Street, Littleton, Mass. Email address selectboard@littletonma.org by 12 p.m. on March 3rd, 2021. I move to open the hearing.
Motion's been made to open the hearing. It's been seconded. All those in favor, Mr. DeCoste,
Mr. Coast is aye.
Mr. Glavy,
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus,
Aye.
Mr. Knox,
Aye.
and Cindy Napoli is aye, and the public hearing is now open and in session. We do have our building commissioner on the call this evening, Mr. Mullen. Good evening. How are you?
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all for inviting me to back here for this. The last meeting I presented the fee increase structure. Joe, my screen's not sharing today. Can you pull up the next item after the
You want
public hearing notice?
You want that? Ed?
The building permit fee comparison. There you go. Thank you, Anthony. The
You're
item
welcome.
that you helped me create. It's just a proposal, how we currently stand right now and what the increase is to, and what I showed you in the last PowerPoint, how much lower the town of Littleton fee structure has been for the past several years. So we're playing a little bit of catch up, and we're just matching the average of the surrounding towns between Littleton, most notably Acton, Air, Groton, Westford, and such. So we went with a base model of $13 per thousand for both commercial and residential, with a minimum permit fee of $100,000.
$100.
I'm sorry, $100. Thank you, Anthony. $100 minimum fee, and then the same for plumbing and electrical. It's $13 per thousand with a minimum of 100. Gas as well.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Mr. Mullen. So is there any questions or comments from the board before we open it up to the public?
I'll just say I appreciate all the time and effort. I know Ed's been working on this for about a year now, so I really appreciate all the time and effort he's put into it. He's done a lot of research and really done his homework. So thank you very much, Ed.
Thank you.
Certainly. Mr. Layden, do we have any hands raised for public input?
Amazing job.
Mike Zeldin, Madam Chair.
Good evening, Mr. Zeldin.
Good evening. Thank you for, my name is Michael Zeldin, 11 Loann Street. I'm the clerk of the Littleton Board of Health, and we're ourselves are in the, shall we say, the beginning stages, which you'll hear more about, of making or proposing certain changes in the way the public health is administered and attended to here in town. And we especially appreciate the building commissioner coming forward with a reorganization plan. I'll call it the organization plan that brings us finally closer to the 21st century, allowing the Board of Health data to be shared and with other important components of the Board of Health's operation. And as you probably must suspect, we're also taking a close look, which you'll hear more about having Littleton, for the first time in many years, having its own Board of Health director. We're looking at the feasibility of that, and certainly the reorganization and the bringing of fees to the level of other towns would put us in a position to seriously consider this. So we have many reasons for supporting this initiative, and we hope that you support it. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Zeldin. Do we have any other public input? No?
There's no more hands, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. If there's, thank you, Mr. Zeldin. Thank you, Mr. Mullen, again, for your hard work on this initiative. It's certainly an important one. I know you've worked on this for a number of months now, so I appreciate you bringing it forward to the board. If there's no other questions or comments from the board on this proposal, are we ready for a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion first then, Madam Chair, to close the hearing, and then we'll follow that up with a vote on the proposal.
Please.
So I'll so move that we close the public hearing on the building permit fee structure proposed.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to close the public hearing. All those in favor, Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste,
It goes as I.
Mr. Nordhaus,
Aye.
Mr. Glavy.
Aye.
Cindy Napoli is aye, and the public hearing is now closed. Now we are ready for
Yep.
a motion.
Okay, I'll move that the select board vote to approve the building permit fee schedule as proposed.
Second.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste,
Mr. It goes as I.
Mr. Nordhaus,
Aye.
Mr. Glavy,
Aye.
and Cindy Napoli is aye. So the motion is approved as written. Thank you again, Mr. Mullen.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
your hard
much.
work.
Good job.
Yeah, go ahead.
Excellent.
All right.
Good
Really
job.
appreciate it. Thank you all.
Excellent. Okay, so it is now 7:24. We do have another public hearing I believe, at 7:30, but we have a little bit of time.
Do you want to do, Madam Chair, if I may, I'm sorry to interrupt. Chris Stoddard's here. Do you want to do the DPW
Yep.
Complete Streets application?
Sure.
Let's promote Chris to a panelist. I'm sure he can be quick.
Good evening, Mr. Stoddard.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. Yeah, I can be pretty quick here. Russell Street between King Street and the 495 bridge is in terrible condition. We all know that. This proposal is to, well, I guess this is kind of a two-step process. We haven't applied for a Complete Streets grant in, I believe it's been 4 years. We got the first one for the Great Roadside of Russell Street to redo that, to install a new sidewalk there. The year after we applied for a grant, we were told by the state, don't waste your time applying, because they kind of wanted to share the wealth. Well, our opinion now is it's been 4 years, so we should be able to apply for the grant again. So what I'm here before you right now is just to ask for the board's approval to submit the grant application to be used on the King Street side of Russell Street. Obviously for new sidewalks, bike lanes, things like that. With the greater intention to reconstruct Russell Street in that area. Our intention is to actually reconstruct it regardless if we get the grant, but obviously getting some money from the state would help offset some of our costs. We are working with the Light and Water Department because we are going to replace the water main and the sewer main at the same time, most likely with the same contract. Light and Water is paying for their portion of the design, and then obviously once we get the construction, we'll work that out at that time. So that's basically it. I'm just here for hopefully approval to submit a Complete Streets application.
And the grant, Chris, and the contract for the Russell Street Improvement Project, the $34,000.
Well, we technically don't need the board because you can sign that, but I mean, if the
All
board,
right, it's in the motion. That's fine.
okay, yeah. If the board's willing to approve that, that'd be ideal.
Okay, excellent. Any questions or comments from Mr. Stoddard from the board?
Thank you for collaborating with Light and Water. That's great.
Excellent. We're ready for a motion?
All right, and there is a motion here. Move that the select board vote to authorize the town administrator to sign the Complete Street grant application for Russell Street improvements and the contract entitled Agreement to Provide Engineering Services to the Town of Littleton, Massachusetts for the Russell Street Improvement Project 2021 in the amount of $34,010.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. DeCoste,
Mr. DeCoste is aye.
Mr. Glavy,
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus,
Aye.
Mr. Knox,
Aye.
and Cindy Napoli is aye, and the motion is approved as written.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris. Okay, so now it is 7:28. We do have a public hearing scheduled at 7:30 on the request to purchase town-owned land, Manchester Drive, lots U 14-101 and U 14-102.
We're looking for a hearing notice read it here. All right. The select board will hold a public hearing on a request to purchase town-owned property on Monday, March 8th, 2021 at 7:30 p.m. The purpose of the hearing is to consider the request from the property owner of 15 Manchester Drive for the purchase of 2 Manchester Drive town parcels identified as U 14-101 and U 14-102. Due to COVID-19, public attendance at the hearing is currently restricted. The public hearing will be held remotely via Zoom video conferencing. Details to be made available on the select board agenda when posted a minimum of 48 hours prior to the board's March 8th, 2021 meeting. In addition, the public hearing can be viewed live on LCTV or online at the littleton.vod. Please feel free to contact the select board town administrator office with any questions. Interested parties are encouraged to attend remotely or to submit written comments to the Littleton town administrator, 37 Shattuck Street, Littleton, Mass. 01460. email address selectboard@littletonma.org by 12 p.m. on March 3rd, 2021. And I move to open the hearing.
Second.
Motion's
Are
been
we
made and
okay to open?
seconded.
It's not quite 7:30. Are we okay to open?
7:29.
Just
You can wait.
saying. And then, well,
Just
they'll-
wait. All right, wait for it.
7:30 now.
The
Wait
person
for
that-
it.
the person
Oh,
that
it's
put in the-
7:30 now, Chuck.
The person that put in the proposal was not invited to the land trust meeting, so I want to make sure that he's given the opportunity to be here for this.
He's on the
already.
call. It's 7:30. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Nordhaus. Motion's been made and seconded to open the public hearing. All those in favor, Mr. DeCoste,
The code is aye.
Mr. Nordhaus,
Aye.
Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Mr. Glavy,
Aye.
and Cindy Napoli is aye, and the public hearing is now open. So we do have the applicant on the call. And do we have the land sale committee? Any representatives from the committee on the call as well?
I mean, that's according to this is Joe. I mean, myself and Anthony, the policy identifies that we're the ones to refer the recommendation to the board.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Layden. Excellent. So I'd like to, we do have the applicant on the call if he would like to come forward.
Hi, yes, this is Brendan McGuire, 15 Manchester Drive.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, thanks.
So the only addition I would make, I had sent in a packet, which I think you were all familiar with. And I'd sent an additional email to Mr. Ansaldi and Mr. Layden on Friday, which I apologize for it being so late. But there were just a few comments that I wanted to make sure were addressed after having read the minutes from the land sale committee. So I think you guys all have that or are familiar with it. And the only other important piece I would like to add is that today is my birthday. So whatever decision you guys make, if you just please keep that in mind, I really appreciate it.
Well played, Brendan. Well played.
Just
I have to
saying.
play that card as much as I can. I only have a few more
Right?
hours. No, but my original proposal was laid out to purchase the two adjacent lots next to my home, which combined account for about 0.4 acres. And they abut the Yap conservation land on two sides. And there was a lot of opposition to that from the meeting minutes that I read from the land sale committee as well as the conservation commission. So the email that I had sent on Friday was just to propose some alternatives to outright purchase of those two lots that I think would make it a little bit more beneficial to the town and kind of appease some of the concerns that were raised in those two meetings. And the first was to carve out a 4,800 square foot section of the adjacent lot to my property and purchase that as part of the land sale, the abutters lot purchase program. There is some precedent. This is done before. It's my understanding that it's a bit of a long process and a little bit expensive on my behalf. But I think if we were able to somehow make that work, and then perhaps put forth a vote to have the rest of it absorbed into the abutting conservation land, that might benefit everybody, make everybody happy. So that's just another idea I wanted to put forth. And then, the third thought would be to just put forth the idea of having it all absorbed into conservation land. And of course, all three of these options are, with the hope that I get a little bit of benefit out of it, in that this land is my only buffer between myself and any of my neighbors. So, there's a little bit of a privacy concern there because our backyard does abut the Yap hayfield. So we really are pretty exposed on two sides of the preserving that lot next to us was pretty important, which is what it gave me the idea to start this process from the get-go. So I just wanted to propose, or at least lay out those two options as we continue this discussion before we, shoot it down altogether, remembering that it is my birthday.
Thank you, Mr. McGuire. Mr. Lane, do we have a map that you could share of the parcels?
Yes, I do. Let me, I also have it on GIS so that I can share the screen here. So the yellow square highlighted is Mr. McGuire's property at 15 Manchester. So the two parcels that are in question are this 102 directly to the east and then 101. Their acreage are a quarter of an acre and then 0.15 acres respectively. And they do abut the 53.84 acre parcel to the south, which is owned by conservation.
Madam Chair, if I could just point out, if you look to the right of lot 101, right where Joe's pointing right now, that is part of the YAP conservation. I'm sure that everybody knew that, but if our birthday gift were to be to absorb all of the land into the YAP conservation, that would be a continuation of that bump out, which was access to Manchester Drive.
Correct.
So it would be, if we weren't willing to carve out a piece to be able to do a tax title sell-off of the portion directly abutting Mr. McGuire's property, I would propose that doing what Joe just kind of outlined and absorbing that whole piece in would just give that access out to Manchester Drive. It's still going to be, kind of overgrown and whatnot, but that preserves that land so that if I were Mr. McGuire, I would want to preserve that land to make sure that somebody else isn't going to gobble that land up and try to sneak a lot or two in there. I think that was some of the concerns that the land sale committee had, was the possibility of creating more lots.
Oh, so if, can you pull that map back up again, Mr. Layton, please? So if Mr. McGuire acquires, say, lot 102, and then 101 is donated to conservation, there was concern about subdividing, or I'm just taking 101 out of the equation right now, but if it was just lot 102, would there still be concern about subdividing that land? I still don't think there's enough property.
Madam Chair.
He wouldn't be able to buy that under tax title because it's too large of a lot. So we'd have to literally carve off less than half of that parcel.
Oh, we'd have to put it out to bid.
Not if we carve off a piece of tax title, we don't have to put it out to bid because it's covered by tax title. But if we were to sell off 102 and or 101, yes, we would have to put it out to bid because they're larger than the tax title protection.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Sure.
So I did a little bit of research. First of all, hi, Brendan, happy birthday. I did a little research on this, and I think that one of the concerns from Conscom was twofold. One is that access to haying is difficult at this time, and they don't want to remove any locations where they can get the tractors and the other equipment in and out. The other one was, any kind of development on that is going to mean that the trees are going to be cut down, which leads to invasives coming in, which is a terrible problem already on that land. So I am in full support of any of these solutions which gets this land basically with a conservation restriction on it, regardless of who ends up owning it. I think that absorbing it into the YAP land would be great. But if we want to carve off a portion for the McGuires and, let them expand their lot, that's fine too.
Yeah, I think, Matthew, if based on any of the proposals that Brendan's put forward, he would be looking at not developing that land. So I think that would afford conservation of the land stewards to be able to better access that land and I'm sure that Brendan would be willing to de-restrict or whatever we needed to do. But I think that at this point in the game, because the land sale committee has kind of given Brendan the Heisman. The two options that I see as kind of win-win would be, one would be to carve off a piece that would be eligible for the tax title, which would just essentially would, if it's 113 feet deep, he'd only be able to get about 40 feet to the east of his existing property line right now, in order to stay under, maybe 42 feet, in order to stay under the tax title eligibility. And then the rest of that land, based on the proposal that he submitted on Friday, would then be absorbed again by the YAP property, which to your point, Matthew, would allow them more protection, more access, and it would protect us as a community as that land not being developed as,
Right.
as a small lot.
And we went through the similar process with another piece of property was it last year or the year before?
It came to town meeting last year, right? The Jeffries property, which is
Right,
it's lot 109, I believe,
right.
where you see that lot line kind of bumps out 10 feet.
Yeah,
That's what we sold off, is that 10-foot jog.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Good.
Go ahead, Mr. Knox.
I just want to first thank Mr. McGuire for the nice packet that was put together. There's a lot of time and effort that was put into that. And I certainly like the idea of a resident trying to make his property better. And I think consideration should be given whatever way possible to allow him to expand his property and still give us the access that might be needed to the back land. But I certainly want to, I certainly appreciate the effort that he's gone through to make his property even better. So I have no problem with that aspect at all. I guess my only thing would be how to carve it off and still protect the land as far as the town goes and going back to the conservation.
Right.
Chair, Joe has his hand up. He's done a lot of work with this.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. I mean, part of it is also just, it's good hearing what you said, because, I'm not aware of any recent town meeting transfer. It at least hasn't happened in the last year I had been here, and I'd be curious to see what mechanism it was done before. So the parcel at 102 is assessed at $75,000. That is well over the $25,000 threshold, where we actually have to follow Chapter 30B procurement requirements and actually go out to bid. And, at that point, Mr. McGuire, as well as any other person, would be available to propose or to prepare a response to, offer to purchase that property. I did talk with town council this morning, and we did both question how a strip can be carved off. That's why I'd be interested to see how that was done in the past. So, for example, carving off a 40-foot strip by 100 would reduce the value of that parcel. That is a financial benefit that then is acquired, and we'd have to make sure that gets assessed as far as a property value. It's not like 101, which then already is a pre-existing non-conforming lot. It's not able to be developed, while 102 is pre-existing non-conforming. It does, at least in a initial review by the building commissioner, did identify to be buildable. Sorry, Chuck, you're...
Yeah, can I just jump in, Joe? So this is all stuff that really should have all been taken care of before the land use or land sale committee was meeting. So what the proposal is that we carve off a piece just like we did right down at lot 109, and we did it, if you go down Newtown Road, 3 lots in, we did it right there as well. So it's, the precedent is there, we've done it. So if that is the route that Mr. McGuire wants to go in as a resident taxpayer and someone that's going to Joe's point, better his property and get some of that property on the tax rolls, I mean, town council knows how to do that. They already did it. So that's, I mean, I apologize, Joe, that you didn't know that we already did this, but we did, and we should have. Somebody that knew this should have been in on the game. And people that are on that committee did know this because they've been around for a little bit. But so
and
I just don't want to hammer the thing to death. I think we have two options before us. We either decide as a board to carve a piece off and give the rest to YAP, or we give the whole thing to YAP. The whole 30B thing, he's not looking to buy 102.
And I would advocate for giving it all to YAP. It's environmentally sensitive. It's a buffer zone between the hayfield. It will keep invasives out. If we carve off a piece to anybody, no matter how well intentioned, that piece can be, the trees can be cut down and it can be turned into lawn. So I would much rather preserve it. I mean, I believe that accomplishes Mr. McGuire's goal of having, some buffer around his property, and it saves some land for Littleton.
I would argue that the invasives that he's going to remediate are going to allow for and afford better wildlife refuge than leaving the bittersweet and the other invasives that are on that property that I've witnessed. I've gone out there and seen it. So I think that what's good for the goose is good for the gander. We did it literally 2 lots away from him a year and a half ago, and I think maintaining, if we go 40 feet in, we're going to have a 120-foot buffer between his property line and the YAP property line where the 113.12 is located, which is fantastic. The fact that he's even offering that up is to Joe's point, he's put a lot of time and effort into this, and he's done a great proposal. I wish he would have been able to have been at the hearing that was held by, although it was via Zoom, by the land sale committee. That's something that we need to fix that in the future, that anybody that is proposing something in front of the land sale committee should absolutely be present at those meetings, or at least invited.
Yeah, and that may be something when we reevaluate policies, because it's a staff committee and all that.
Joe, that's a courtesy. If a person puts forward a proposal, they should be invited. That's not a policy issue.
Right. So
you can disagree if you want,
this,
Joe. I don't agree with you.
Yeah.
Right. So we've done this before. I believe Mr. Bergman was the town administrator at the time.
Correct.
It was 2017, 2018. I was just looking up some of the meeting minutes from that time. We're not reinventing the wheel here. We've already done this. So we can I'm certainly in favor of doing this again to accommodate Mr. McGuire. I'm not concerned about the wildlife corridor. I mean, I think that's already been preserved with the lot that is adjacent to 101. And if he's just looking to carve off a piece of 102, I think and we can deed the rest of it into conservation. I think that's perfect. It's preserving that land. So
I would sorry, Cindy.
No, yeah, let me finish. So we have the process in place. So if the board's in favor, I'd like to go back and look at the process that we followed and move forward in that regard to accommodate Mr. McGuire's request.
If I may jump in now, sorry to interrupt you, Cindy. I would ask Mr. McGuire, I think he's still here, if he'd be willing to put some sort of, or just give us some commitment that it's not going to be, you're not looking to put a massive barn or garage or some other structure on there. You're looking to just keep it relatively natural.
Sure, Chuck. Yeah, I mean, that was another point that I meant to mention in the email that I sent Friday. And the whole motivation for this was not at all to build anything on there, especially not make it a buildable lot and build a house on it.
Right.
It was really just to expand our yard a little bit, maybe put a garden in, but certainly nothing. For those of you that haven't been to this property, it's incredibly overrun with bittersweet. I mean, there are vines that are 8 inches thick. They're choking the tree. You can't walk through it. It's a bit of an eyesore. So, my whole plan was to just make it a usable wooded lot so my kids could run around in there and climb the trees and be kids. Which I don't think would impact any of the wildlife corridor or the wildlife sanctuary that the conservation committee had concerns with. No plans to build anything on there. I'm happy to have it absorbed into my lot and respect any zoning boundaries or deed restrictions that are necessary to put on it.
maybe this is a question for Mr. Mullen, but is there, what kind of restrictions are on that land? And if he expands that plot, like, does that offer him the opportunity to build more outbuildings or swimming pools, or, what's possible?
Thank you. If I may, Madam Chair. If he's buying 10-foot wide strip or 40-foot wide strip, the length of the eastbound side of his property, the setbacks would change. He would be allowed to go up to 10 feet off the side and off the rear and 30 feet from the front. First, I want to say that, I was part of the land use, the land sale committee, and I should have brought it to everyone's attention because I was aware of the tax title that was done on Newtown Road, and we never discussed it because we were just looking at the lots as were they buildable if they were conjoined. Input in common ownership, he still doesn't meet the 40,000. So if you were to sell him the whole of 102, as long as he was the owner of the initial property and he didn't own it separately under another name, it wouldn't become buildable. So you could sell him the whole lot, it wouldn't be buildable. You could do the tax title, but the procurement issues come up if you do the whole lot. So if you do the tax title, I definitely think you are on the right path. It does give him the opportunity to put an outbuilding like a shed up to 10 feet away from the rear and side of the property line. But he already has that issue. He could also offer to deed restrict it to not develop it.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest that. I mean, we can, with the, I guess I'd pose this question to Anthony in the absence of counsel, Madam Chair, if you indulge me, just is the way this has been posted, are we within the four corners of the posting if we were to make a movement to put some sort of limitation on the building of the property? It's easy to enforce if prospective buyer is not interested in building a structure on there anyway, if we just put that into the language.
It's a good question, Paul. I don't really have an answer on that. I don't remember what the restrictions were on the other two properties that were referenced. I was just trying to look them up quick.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Manchester
identical
Drive.
issue may not have come up before, but
I don't know if you can require. I don't know if you can put any restriction on it.
Why not?
I don't know. I don't know if you can.
Yeah.
That's a question we'd have to pose to town council.
Look at the last sentence I wrote and say that.
In all honesty, we're talking about 40 by 100-foot strip of land. We're not talking about acres and acres of land here.
Right.
I don't have a problem if he did put a shed on a 40-foot. I don't have any problem with that. It's
Yeah, I mean, I didn't speak earlier to the general proposal, but as much as I support our ongoing efforts to sell off lots when they don't create new building lots. All the effort here has been put on by Mr. McGuire, and there wasn't any competing interest up until his proposal to acquire it to make this part of any other conservation land. So if his intention is to buy it and, just either improve it without not able to build on it anyway, you got to clear the lot, clean it up, whatever. That's probably better than what's happening right now. I mean, he's a neighbor to whatever invasive species would come in there. He's probably more motivated than anybody else to eradicate them. So whether it's splitting the thing in two or putting a restriction on that if we sold them both, that he's not able to build a house on it, whatever, it sounds like with a solution we could do somewhere here, protect all of our interests and give the gentleman what he's looking for and get it off the town rolls.
Right. So there was a limitation, I think, in the amount of land that we could break off in the prior process that we went through with the Jeffries property. So certainly we need to go back with town council, revisit the process at that time, because we've, like I said, we've already.
Cindy, 4,800 square feet.
Okay. And see how we can make it work for this proposal.
We maybe ask town council about the deed restriction at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
because yeah, absolutely. Because I know we've had this discussion before. We didn't do enough homework on our end, just because we have been through this process before.
Right.
So how do we move forward from here?
Can we continue the hearing until we get council's input?
Yeah, because I
Land's
wouldn't
not-
want to
land's
vote
not
on
going
something.
anywhere. It may not be your birthday, Brendan, but the land's not going anywhere.
And this is a public hearing, so is there any hands raised or any public input?
There's no hands raised, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so unfortunately, Brendan, we can't grant you your birthday present this evening, but we are going to, I hope you'll accept a rain check as we circle back with town council and do a little bit more diligence on our end and continue this public hearing, and we'll revisit this once we get some more information on the process.
Madam Chair, if through you to Anthony, do we need to continue to a date certain, or can we fill that part in later?
You can fill that part in later. We don't have a date right now. Let's get the information from town council and then we can agenda it at another meeting.
Or we can
Okay.
just continue it to the next meeting, and then if we don't have anything at that point, just continue it again to the next meeting.
But even then, we'd probably want to have a specific time if we were going to do that, or
For continuation?
does it matter? Yeah. Do you want to continue this right now? Assume by the 22nd, we'll have our ducks in a row, and if they aren't, we can postpone it, but I can move that we postpone.
I'd say so. I mean, if we just continued it to 7:30 next meeting,
On the 22nd.
if this has already been done, then at least we can prepare a motion to for the board to then close the hearing.
Just want to make sure we don't already have a competing hearing scheduled at the same time, do we, or do we not?
Some towns would schedule all their public hearings at one time. Actually, just give me a second because I believe we just scheduled one for liquor license.
right.
That's at 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 7:30 works.
Okay, why don't we, Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that we continue the hearing until our meeting on Monday, March 22nd at 7:30.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Knox,
Yeah,
Mr. DeCoste,
Coates is aye.
Mr. Nordhaus,
Aye.
Mr. Glady,
All right.
and Cindy Napoli is aye. The public hearing has been continued to the 22nd at 7:30. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. McGuire.
Thank you, and thank you all. I
Happy
know this is-
birthday.
Thank you. This has been a long process, and I know everybody's put a lot of time and energy in it, so I'm just grateful and thank you all.
We're close to
Welcome.
a solution though, Brendan.
Yeah, we are.
It'll be a belated birthday present in some way.
One way
There
or
you go.
another. As long as that liquor commission license doesn't go to that property, I'm okay.
Well, careful.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Okay. So we should go back on the agenda to item 2C, the town clerk annual town report dedication.
Mr. Layden, can you put me on the waiting room or something?
Absolutely. Thanks.
Okay, so in the board's packet, we have some information regarding the dedication of the annual town report. This is something that the select board does every year. And we have a list of people who have passed away, residents who passed away last year in the town of Littleton, and some names that were to be considered by the board for the dedication of the annual town report.
Madam Chair, it doesn't appear that the town clerk's here, but she's identified 3 names. I have them up on the screen right here as possible persons for the dedication of the town report.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Insulti. So I just wanted to ask something of the board. The first year that I was on the select board and we went through this exercise, the board was given a list. And we had a discussion amongst ourselves of names that each board member presented some names for consideration for the dedication. I feel like we've gotten away from that process, and I don't know if there was a reason that we did get away from that process, if any board members.
I don't know if there's a reason for it, Madam Chair, but I can add to your history that it goes back to the 80s. I remember that exercise annually, that we would request of the clerk the list of who had passed on and was buried in town, and then we would, from our various perspectives, have a discussion. But it's only been in fairly recent time that we've been also handed a list of recommendations, which makes it a little awkward when you're trying to, you obviously don't want to. I wouldn't want to offend anybody by not going along with the recommendations there. I'm happy with the ones that are made, but there are other names that I would have thought to include too, and would want to see under consideration.
Okay. And so why don't we start right there, Mr. Glavy? What are those recommendations or recommendation?
Yeah. Well, again, the clerk did provide, some very stellar and missed citizens of the town: Earl Banks, Kathy Knox, and Mary Stenstrom. But one that jumps out, there's a number of folks here that have served on boards and that at various times or in other ways serve the community. People like Steve Sussman, Don Soul, Bill Ewing, Stan Knox at the post office, Dottie Chase, and so many things. But one in particular, I think we would be doing a disservice if we didn't recognize on an equal footing, at least with the folks that have been recommended, and that would be Carolyn Webster. I would say her role is essentially the historian of the town for decades, and the charitable activities associated with her work leading the Baptist Church as well. A real key to the community.
Right. I agree. Are there any other comments from the board?
That was a name that jumped out at me as well.
Okay, I agree. I didn't, and again, certainly the list, the names that were provided by the town clerk, certainly noteworthy residents of Littleton who contributed a lot to our community for years. There's no doubt about that. And certainly Carolyn Webster as well. I did go through the list. There was, a few names, like you mentioned, Paul, Dottie Chase was one of them.
Yeah.
So I don't know where we go from here. How many did we include in the report last year?
I believe there were 3, because I remember, because that was the one that my dad, Walter Bartkus, and John Hathaway were on. So
Right.
That's what I'll add before I lose sight of it. Sad to have the honor, but appreciated as well. But in any case, when something's written on any of these, run it by the family first. There were errors and omissions of family members that would just kind of unfortunate and could have been prevented if whatever blurb is written up. I mean, the simple exercise of running it by somebody from one of the families to make sure it's accurate would be
Right. Right.
Save some embarrassment.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we have Carolyn Webster, we have Earl Banks, we have Kathy Knox, and we have Mary Stenstrom. Was there anyone else that the board wanted to consider?
I would yield to our historian, Mr. Glavy.
I know, right?
Well, as I Don Soul worked on the school building committee a lot of years. With the building that at least a couple of the folks in this room are operating out of right now. When they did the project for converting Shattuck Street to the town hall, he was part of that committee. Bill Ewing was a fixture in a lot of things in town, and I guess in town board services, pretty much limited to his activity years ago on the transportation or the MBTA advisory committee. But you mentioned Dottie Chase. I mean, her, a lot of activity there with the scholarship trust and other things over the years. It's hard not to. It's hard to pick. So I don't know whether we have to do this tonight or whether we want to just give it some thought. I could go either way. If you're forced to make a choice, I could go with the names we mentioned and any that anybody wanted to add. I don't think there's any hard set rule about how many we have to do.
Okay.
If likewise you wanted more time to think about it, Madam Chair, I'd fortune that too.
I would appreciate that, Mr. Glavy, because there was a few names on here that are familiar to me, and I just wanted to do a little bit more
research
on them. Yeah. Is that agreeable to the board?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Let's be thoughtful about it.
Yep,
Okay.
better to get it right than regret it.
okay, excellent, thank you. All right, good. So we can bring Mr. Knox back. And next on the agenda, we have the library project construction update.
Joe, who was going to be presenting tonight?
We have Mark attending the meeting.
So let's promote Mark to a panelist. You can give an update.
Yep.
Good evening, Mark.
Hello. I was just attending because I saw it on the agenda. I didn't know I was presenting anything, but I'll give you an update of what the status is on the building project.
Okay,
The trustees toured the building on Thursday, and I believe the library staff got to tour it today. They are, I believe, most, if not all, of the HVAC system is in. The electrical work is being completed now. And drywall will be going up on the first floor, which is the basement level, the one below, later this week. They are on track and on budget. We're actually, the latest update from the contractors, they're 2 weeks ahead of schedule. So they're tracking towards September 1st for a completion date.
oh,
They think there's a possibility that they could be even earlier on that, but there's no commitment on that yet. And every week they're early saves us money, so that's a good thing. So there have been no real surprises. There's no, everything's looking good. The contractor has been great to work with. The CM at risk process has been really good for this project, where the contractors, Joe and Ed attend most of these meetings. There's regular meetings on Wednesday where we go over all of the issues, the 3-week look ahead schedule and everything. And it has been a wonderful process to follow. It's been very smooth all along. So as far as fundraising goes, we are very close to we committed to raise $1 million. We are within spitting distance of the $1 million. We'll be doing a final push here in the next few weeks because we have to get, if anyone wants their name on the wall, we're going to have that list finalized I think the plan is to have it finalized in early April. So if you want your name on the wall, we need to have the commitment for that fairly soon. So I can answer any questions if you have any, but everything's looking really good as far as the construction schedule. There's been no major disruptions that I'm aware of. So.
great. That's excellent news, Mark. Thank you so much for that update. So if somebody wants to get their name on the wall, what is the process for that?
So there, if you go to there's a building project off the library site. There's a building project. You can make a donation. All donations over $1,000 and up will be recognized on the wall. We're still deciding exactly what the wall will look like as far as that goes, but everything's on the building site. It's littletonlibraryproject.org is the website. And you still, we're not requiring you to pay the full $1,000 now. We still have I think you have 2 or 3 years left that we're still taking the donations.
Okay, excellent. Great. Thank you very much. Any questions?
And one other thing is we have now, the grant was over 5 years and we've received the 3rd payment on the grant as of about a month ago. So we have just over $3 million from the grant so far in the
Excellent.
bank.
Great. Any questions or comments from the board?
I'll add this much, big projects can oftentimes lead to big headaches, and knock on wood, we aren't having any yet with this project, so that's terrific. So good job, Mark, to you, your team, and everybody involved.
Yeah,
Thank you.
very much.
The contractor has been great to work with. They're doing they're very responsive to all the issues. There was an issue with one of the abutters complaining about lights shining in, and the contractor went out and adjusted the lights on the site and has been very cooperative and very helpful. We're also thankful that the church is allowing them to use their parking lot. Everything has just come together very nicely. Everyone's very cooperative. So
That's
Great to
excellent.
hear.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks. Appreciate the update, Mark.
you're welcome.
Thanks, Mark.
So we are now on to public input and members updates. Do we have anyone for public input, Mr. Layden?
Currently, no one has their hand raised.
Okay, so we'll move on to public input. We will start with Mr. DeCoste.
I've got nothing right now, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Certainly, Mr. Nordhaus.
Just a couple things, thank you. I wanted, Mr. Ansaldi mentioned the community policing event. I want to mention to the public that you have to register in advance, which is just entering your name and your email to receive the link to the meeting, and that you can also submit questions in advance for the moderator to ask the panel. So if you have a burning question for Chief Bernard, now's the time. I also want to let the public know about a really amazing program, the child care subsidies. So Acton, Boxborough, Littleton, Maynard, and Westford have funds through the Mass Department of Housing and Community Development, through Regional CARES Act, in order to basically subsidize childcare for families who need it. And one of the things that impressed me is this is for low and moderate income families, 80% of the median income. So for Littleton, that means a family of four making $96,000 would qualify for some of these subsidies. And the provider does not need to be in Littleton. If you work in Burlington and you have your child care in Burlington, you can still use the subsidies. I know that when my kids were little, something like this, especially in the pandemic, would have been a godsend. So I hope people take advantage of that if they need it.
Excellent, thank you.
And I'm sorry, I should have said it. All this information is on the town, on the front page of the town website.
Great, thank you. Mr. Glavy?
I'm all set tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Knox?
All set, thank you.
All right, excellent. So I have a few things to share this evening. I had mentioned at the previous select board meeting interest in the Veterans Heritage Grant Program that's being offered through Secretary Galvin's office. After speaking with the Historic Commission, they had no projects that they felt would be applicable to the grant at this time. I did speak with John Borowski and Hal Baker from the Veterans. And so we're going to move forward with an application to restore the World War I monument. That's the monument located on the corner of Shattuck Street and King Street. It was actually a monument that was created in the 1930s with funding from the American Legion as well as the town of Littleton. So that monument's stood tall and strong for a number of years, but it's time for needs a little love, a little facelift. So we're going to apply to the Veterans Heritage Grant for some matching funds for that project. And so I'll keep the board updated on that proposal. And also with respect to the Veterans Corner, there was some additional names to be added to the Veterans Corner. I did locate a company that might be able to assist with adding those names, and I've reached out to them to gauge their interest. So I just wanted to let the board know about that. I will definitely keep you updated as that progresses. The other thing I wanted to mention is the planning board's meeting is scheduled for March 18th, that there will be a meeting to discuss the Littleton Station project. No, yeah, the Littleton Station project, which is the 40R development on Foster Street, right adjacent to the train station. So I urge the public to attend the meeting of the planning board on March 18th to learn more about that important project. The other thing I wanted to talk about too, as I mentioned earlier in the meeting, I'm chair of the Master Plan Implementation Committee. We are putting together an update for the town residents to be presented at town meeting this year, just about the achievements of the master plan, that achievements and works in progress. I've learned over the past few years that a lot of towns don't even have a master plan. So the fact that Littleton has one, but not only do we have one, we have an implementation committee that's done a lot of work since inception to follow the plan and make some improvements and follow some of the recommendations in that report. So we're putting all that together to share with the public at town meeting this coming May. So looking forward to that. I think people will be interested in seeing what we've done, what the community's done, and what we're currently working on. And the other thing I wanted to mention, we were going to talk about senior tax exemptions. We talked about it at our last meeting, and we had discussed putting it on the agenda for this meeting. I've had some people come forward and ask me why it wasn't on the agenda. It was just an oversight. So we're planning on having that discussion at our next select board meeting. So I just wanted to make people aware that we are working on it, but it was just an oversight not having it on the agenda this evening. That is all. Thank you. And next on the agenda, we have a discussion regarding ambulance receipts, fiscal year 21 and 22 fire department budget. And I see we have Chief Wodzinski on the call.
Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
Good, thanks. Yourself?
Good.
Good. So over the last several months with COVID, COVID has really impacted everyone. And as we continue to go through and review the revenues coming in from the ambulance receipts, the paramedic program and whatnot, we have definitely started to see those effects of COVID and a reduction of revenues coming in due to the lack of transports to the hospital. We're roughly down 200 medicals, or 200 ambulance transports per se, over the last year since the impact of COVID. And on that note, we are anticipating roughly upwards of $100,000 shortfall on the $650,000 budget offset. So it comes down to a number of reasons for the reduction. Look back at when the state was really shut down. There was nobody on the roads. All of the businesses were shut down. There weren't any, nobody working in their offices. So it really dropped that call volume. In addition to one of our largest customers being the nursing home. Half of the resident population had gone away, unfortunately, as a result of COVID. So that is starting to build back up. The movement around town is starting to build back up, just not quite at a pace that we're anticipating. A few of the other things that we've noticed in speaking with our billing company is that some of the people are, it's a bit longer at paying their bills. And so our correlation with our response numbers and the actual revenues that come in are roughly, it's a 3 to 4 month difference. So, we're just starting to see the revenues right now for, say, December and January. So it's a little pacing difference as we go through and look at our receipts coming in compared to the run volume. On that note, we have taken a few actions to offset our offset or the lack of by putting off the two capital items. Those roughly equate to $108,000. That would fill that void for the offset going forward for next year's numbers. In addition to that, we have put off the purchase of the ambulance. So until the revenues pick back up and we're at a comfortable level. I believe in all the handouts that everybody received, you were able to kind of look at the run volumes from the last few years, basically from 2013 to present with the comparisons. And then we also included the revenues, and we see that would be on the red lines where you would notice the impact of COVID and the reduction in the revenue stream.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Any questions or comments from the board for Chief Wodzinski?
Not a surprise, given what's going on, that this should happen. Just appreciate the chief staying on top of it. Had a chance to talk with him earlier about it myself, and I knew that this was coming, but it's at least hopeful that things are starting to show signs of getting back to normal. Chief,
very slow.
Right.
We were hopeful that it was starting to come back. That we did notice an increase in run volume in December and January. November and December, and then it dropped back down again in January. So that is kind of really the point where it was to raise concern. And, we can only hope that with the vaccines being out and some type of new normal coming back, that this will increase. Looking at the revenues that are coming in, just this past month, we're looking and still seeing we received 4 payments back from 2018. So things would typically take a little while to come in. Some folks are on payment plans for a number of reasons. The 2020 bills that are outstanding seem to be taking a bit longer. Just for that reason, a lot of folks stopped paying for things during COVID. Be it that, and the number of just is down. So that's what we're seeing right now. But
so, Madam Chair, if I may.
Mhm.
So do you have concerns going forward that you're ever going to be able to make that offset again? I mean, with fewer and fewer people commuting, more and more people working from home, there's less people on the roads, you're not responding to as many accidents. Do you think there's ever going to be a time when you'd be able to make that sort of a makeup on the offset?
I feel that we will. I feel that we will make that back up. The last 2 weeks, I feel like our run volume has picked up noticeably as people get out there and let's face it, once they start going back to the restaurants, the movie theaters, the shopping, just getting out on the roads and getting back to some of that normal activity, that's going to increase everything. Every community around here is feeling the same effects right now from that.
Yeah, but a lot of communities are preparing for the other side of the scenario as well, where there's fewer and fewer people commuting, there's fewer and fewer cars on the road, and I mean, insurance companies are even making adjustments for us having our cars on the road because we're driving so few miles now. I can say it for myself. I'm way down on my mileage is, and my insurance company's reached out to do an offset. So it's being felt by everybody, and I just don't know that we're ever going to get back there. And if that's not going to happen, I just don't know how we're going to be able to recreate that offset. And it's a pretty significant offset that we/you are going to have to come up with. I mean, there's more and more people unemployed now, and it's I don't know. I think it's going to. I love your optimism, but I mean, we we're excited about your optimism back in August too, and we're here now, and it's scary. You know, it's just it's a new reality, I think, and I think we have to start planning for it.
I want to stay optimistic with it, that it comes back. You know, one of the other effects that have felt through COVID is we lost the majority of our call department as well. So we have very few members there remaining on the department. And, you know, that's definitely an effect that we are dealing with as we get some of these larger incidents and fire calls. There's only a few people left on the call department. So we rely on our shift and mutual aid for the most part right now.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
I just appreciate getting the updates, Chief, and I just say that, you know, we should make sure
We're just
that
gonna have to monitor as much we can.
That's it. I mean, whether it's quarterly or you know,
probably monthly, Chuck. Really, you know, to kind of see what direction it's going in.
I think we need to kind of put that kind of system in place, and then that's because it is, you know, it's cause and effect, right? So it's very much part and parcel with where your budget goes. It's so we want to try to keep as close a watch on it as we can.
Okay.
I do appreciate you being as proactive as you have been, given that we're now not in a situation where we're $100,000 in the hole. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Any other questions or comments from the board? I do see that we have Cheryl on the call as well. I didn't know if she had anything to add or.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I agree with, you know, Paul and Chuck, and in fact, I've set up monthly meetings with the chiefs to make sure that we're kind of staying on top of this, because I do think, and, you know, I do think it's good for him to come back to the board as well to see if his assumptions are kind of holding up, because if this does continue, you know, if they can't make their offset, there might be some, you know, decisions that might have to be made. Because that offset does support, you know, a number of staff. So if this is something that we don't see bouncing back in the long term or in the near future, you know, we have this year resolved, but it is something we'll need to keep an eye on.
Okay, great. Thank you. Excellent. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate the update.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, you too. So next on the agenda is item 7. We have an amendment to the Community Care Collective, Inc. host community agreement.
Joe, would you put me in the waiting room, please?
I didn't know we had a waiting room. Like Super Zoom?
Do we have Mr. Giannetta? We have Chris Heap on the call. So as the board may recall, we did have Mr. Giannetta come before us at our last meeting. I know that he moved forward and held his public outreach meeting, and I see we have Chris Heap on the call, so maybe I'll have Chris give us an update or.
Sure. Hello, everybody. So when we last discussed this, the board instructed me to make an addition to the host community agreement. And the addition that you instructed me to make was to add a new condition into the HCA that would, and this was added out of a concern that we were coming close to approving an HCA, but we hadn't, there hadn't been much of an opportunity for public input on this, on the new site yet. So what the board had me do is add a condition into the HCA that required Mr. Giannetta to come back and appear before the board, your board, 30 days after he held his community outreach meeting to discuss any input that was presented during that meeting. And then that the board could add new conditions if it wanted to respond to any of the concerns that were expressed at that community outreach meeting. I added that condition into the HCA. Mr. Giannetta and his attorney agreed to it. But then I think based just on passage of time, before the board could reconsider that new language, Mr. Gianetta then went ahead and held his community outreach meeting, reported back to me that he had not much in the way of public comment. So having had me add that condition and him agree to it, he then made the request that we pull that condition out entirely and remove it. So I was not in attendance at the community outreach meeting, so I can't report exactly what level of public concern was expressed, but the reporting I received from Mr. Gianetta was that there wasn't much to respond to, so he has made a request of the board to remove that new condition that I added and just move ahead with the HCA without it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Heap. So I'm going to call on Mr. DeCoste because I believe that you did attend the community outreach meeting, correct?
I did on behalf of the board, yes.
Yep.
So, and Mr. Gianetta's attestation is correct. There was one question that was relative to traffic at Beaverbrook, and Mr. Gianetta's attorney addressed it from the standpoint of the amount of retail establishments that are available, that are open right now in the Commonwealth are 97, and by the time Mr. Gianetta opens his doors, there'll likely be about 200 shops open. And the days of watching the news and seeing all kinds of traffic in Leicester or any of the early adapters, any of the early shops that were open, that's not happening anymore. And we can even we can take a look right down the road at Gage and Air and see that is the case. So that, coupled with the state's plan to put a traffic mitigating roundabout or some sort of traffic mitigating system in place at the intersection of Beaverbrook and Great Road, assuage any of the concerns that the one person that did raise their hand during the meeting had. Other than that, there literally was not another question or a hand raised, and there was, I think, 14 people in attendance. So I think that the request to remove that language relative to the public input meeting or the community outreach meeting is, I don't think there's any, it doesn't give us any teeth. There's no reason.
Right, it's moot. It seems like it's moot at this point.
Yes.
Yeah.
My purposes are essentially being, the concerns I expressed at the last meeting are essentially being met by, one, the public outreach meeting that you've already managed to conduct, David, and two, the fact that we're advertised tonight so that anybody who is interested would have an opportunity to speak tonight too. So I personally don't see any need to clutter up the HCA with language, as long as the the practice is established that will give the public a chance to have input if there's any
process.
A process of some sort. Sure. So I'd be curious whether it's from Chuck or David, who was notified to come there and what sorts of folks. You don't need to name names. Were they business abutters, residential abutters? I mean, it sounds like it went great, which is not a surprise, but any more detail you can add to that would be appreciated.
Sure. Yeah, I'll kick that back to David or Chris.
Happy to speak to that, Madam Chair, if I may.
Certainly.
Okay, thank you. So yes, we followed the formality of hosting a community outreach meeting as it's required by the Cannabis Control Commission. And as such, we reach out to the local assessor. They provide a certified abutters list of within 300 feet radius of the property, the subject property. So I had about 18 abutters to notify. I did so within the appropriate time period of 7 days or more. I notified them almost 2 weeks away from the meeting, or prior to the meeting. And so, proper notification was made. I have all the certified mail receipts in my possession. I will need to provide those to the Cannabis Control Commission as another requirement. So they were notified for that, and simultaneously, I actually, because our public hearing for the planning board was scheduled only 2 days after, on the 4th, I also notified them. So each abutter received 2 notices. one for the community outreach meeting and one for the public hearing for the planning board, which also, I believe Madam Chair was at that meeting as well as Chuck. And the turnout there was even better, I would say. There was no public input. There were a few letters that came in toward the end of February, but prior to my community outreach meeting. So my guess is that we addressed any concern or question, satisfactorily. So at the public hearing, there really was no input of any kind. So
I got a question right here.
What did you say?
That's my cat, Golden Boy.
okay. Hey,
Like,
Golden
wait,
Boy.
what's going on?
He's looking at cat, Madam Chair. That's all.
Can't help him.
So
Yeah, exactly.
Hopefully
Right.
that addresses the questions that you had, Paul, about.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I
Great.
appreciate that, David, very much.
You're very welcome.
That's all I was really looking for. I think people feel comfortable with that. The only other points, Madam Chair, I think it was touched upon last time, but our public safety folks, Chief Wazinski, Chief Penard, have both taken a look at the new location. And we have input. We did. I think we did last time, didn't we?
Right.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And if there was anybody on the call that's interested, on the Zoom rather, that's interested from the audience, I would welcome any input, but I wouldn't be surprised if we don't have any.
Right. Are there any hands raised, Mr. Layden? No. All right. Excellent.
Great.
Great. All right. Good.
If I may add one other request, is just formality as part of the process. There is a certification form that after we sign the HCA, that I will also, in addition to the HCA, need to have signed. It's provided by the Cannabis Control Commission. Former administrator Nazarian had signed it last time on March 6th of 2020. And so this time around, Mr. Ansaldi would be, of course, the administrator to sign that same document. It's a simple one page, just acknowledging that we signed the HCA on, this date. And that would be the only other item. And I'm happy to just bring that to Mr. Ansaldi, and we can sign together if that's okay.
Madam Chair, maybe I'll just amend the motion here to authorize the town administrator to sign that.
That'd be perfect.
What's the title of the document again, David?
It's a HCA certification form.
Okay.
Host community agreement certification form.
Ready for a motion, Madam Chair?
Please.
Yeah. All right. I'll move that the board vote to execute the amended host community agreement with Community Care Collective, Inc. and the location change from 531 King Road to that should be King Street, right? To 537 Great Road, and to authorize the town administrator, Anthony Ansaldi, to sign the host community agreement certification form.
Second.
Excellent. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. DeCoste?
Mr. DeCoste is aye.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
Mr. Knox?
Aye.
And Sue Napoli is aye, and the motion is approved as written and amended by the clerk. Thank you very much.
Good luck,
Thank
David.
you, Mr. Giannetta. Thank you
Good luck.
for your
Good luck,
patience and work on this. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. I appreciate your help as well. Have a good evening.
Thanks, you too.
Okay.
Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
All right, next we are on to item 8, which is annual special town meeting warrant.
Can we grab Matthew back?
Bring Matthew
Yep.
back.
In the process.
You want to lead this off, Mr. Ansaldi?
Sure, Madam Chair. So, as we all know, right now, town meeting is scheduled for May 3rd per the bylaw. We don't expect to be in a much of a different situation than last year. There's still plenty of people that aren't vaccinated. I would anticipate this being a large meeting, so having that at the middle school gym is probably doubtful. So at this point, if the board wanted to make arrangements to look at a Saturday, and we threw some dates down, May 15th, June 19th is the preferred, gives us a little bit more time.
That's the state holiday though, right?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
You're right.
I know that because it's my birthday.
We
That's
know,
why it's a
Paul.
holiday, Paul.
You and McGuire.
That's right.
Yeah, geez.
Yeah.
I know that the 25th is available. I'd have to get in touch with Steve.
It would be the 26th, Joe, right?
26th.
Check the week. Yeah, 26th. The week after is free, but that's cutting it really close.
Is
What about the week
12
prior?
too early?
My understanding from Steve Mark was that last day of school is the 17th.
Were we looking to use the football field again, or what was the expectation? Yeah, well, then does it matter if school's still in session or not?
Yeah. School is in session in the fall.
Right.
Do they have field days or anything planned, Joe? Is that why he was hesitant? Or?
No, I mean, the request was quite honestly for the 19th and 25th. Can't believe I missed that. So didn't even ask about the week before.
All right. So then the 12th, about if we look at the 12th with a rain date on the 13th.
Sounds reasonable.
Okay.
June 12th. Okay, yeah. So yeah, the election is the week prior, right? Yeah.
Election will still be May 8th.
Right. Yeah.
May 8th, yeah.
Okay.
Mixing up my months, my days.
I know. Okay, so we'll look at June 12th with the rain date of the June 13th.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right. Oh, an alumni field.
That necessarily affects our warrant article schedule as well. Is that right, Anthony?
It would. It would actually give us more time. We wouldn't close the warrant, so we would be adjusting the warrant closing date. We did have Joe put together a schedule based on the 19th, but Joe, do you have a date that it would close the warrant close? Based on
it would be, it would be just back a week. So, sorry, I'm just looking at the close warrant would be 1 week prior to May 5th, which would be April 28th.
Okay.
Yeah, Madam Chair, while we're on this topic, I think it's let's make a virtue of this necessity here and try to get as much accomplished as we can. We've been throwing around a lot of, well, not more than throwing around. We've been carefully considering a lot of house cleaning and reorganization type stuff, and a lot of that involves changing of language in the bylaws that are time consuming. So, hey, this gives us an extra month to get some of that stuff done.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Okay.
There's a motion in the packet that for that date and time, or you want to hold off and do it on the 22nd? Although, what's the date that we have already said that we were closing the warrant? Was that the 19th? I mean, the
April.
Yes, March 19th was the close if we were keeping a May 3rd town meeting.
All right.
I say we bump it out either way. I just for the reasons Paul just stated, and it just seems practical. It's
Yeah. Yeah, well, we're all hopeful that things are gonna get normal quick, but we really, we just don't know all that just yet.
Right.
So maybe
In
just,
addition,
so at the least, maybe we just have a motion, Paul, to change the date of the closing of the warrant from March 12th to date to be determined at the next board meeting.
Okay, and also that, should I be making the motion to include the new town meeting date too?
We can, and then if it changes, we can get back on the 22nd and say there's a problem with the school.
Okay, and what was the date on the closing the warrant part, Joe or Anthony again?
April 28th, Joe? Is that what you said?
April,
Yeah.
April 28th, yeah.
All right.
So
All
the
right,
date
then,
is June.
for reasons stated during the discussion, I would move then that we the select board vote to change the date for the 2021 annual town meeting to Saturday, June 12th, and that the warrant will be closed on April 28th.
How about the venue? Make sure you just state that it'll be.
Oh,
on-
yeah.
And the time. Did you do 10 o'clock last time?
It was 9.
Was it 9?
We had done 9.
We did it early, and the reason we did it early is because it
We
gets
had voting
warm.
the same day, didn't we? We had something going on.
Yeah, I think it was, we had elections or primaries that day, didn't we?
We did, but in addition, Alumni Field can get warm
The
because of
sun
the
gets higher
turf.
in the sky, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so
So then you wanted at 9 a.m. at Alumni Field?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, then the motion then would be to change the date of the annual town meeting to, excuse me, Saturday, June 12th at 9 a.m. at Alumni Field with the warrant closing date for articles of April 28th.
Second.
Can we just make sure that we confirm with the town clerk that
Oh, yeah.
timing wise, 9 a.m.
And the moderator too, obviously.
Yep.
Please,
We'll start with the school, and if the school is okay with that, Chuck, we'll pass that on to everybody else.
And that's all pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 39, Section 9. Matthew seconded.
I seconded it, yeah.
Okay, all right, good. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. DeCoste,
Mr. Coast is aye.
Mr. Glavy,
Aye.
Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus.
Aye.
City Napoli is aye, so the motion is approved. We are rescheduling the date of town meeting to June 12th and closing the warrant on April 28th. And town meeting is going to be at Alumni Field. Okay, excellent. So next we're on to, we have proposed amendments to the stormwater bylaw and regulations.
Madam Chair, we have Rebecca Lacy from the Hours in Harrington here to talk through this.
Good evening, Rebecca. How are you?
Good evening. I'm well, thanks. All right, so stormwater again. I was before you a couple years ago talking about this, and now it's time for round 2. So this is for a brief discussion, an initial discussion of a potential warrant article that town council is recommending in order to have the town remain in compliance with its MS4 stormwater permit. So in your packet was this short cover memo regarding these proposed bylaw amendments, and then a copy of the redlined amendment showing the change, redlined bylaw showing the potential amendments. And so just to recap, this is the town has a stormwater management and erosion control bylaw adopted in 2016. It was adopted to comply with the town's stormwater permit that EPA, with which EPA and Mass DEP impose requirements on the town regarding the discharges from the town's storm drain system. That permit was recently updated to heighten the standards in the permit. Therefore, municipalities all across Eastern Mass all need to subsequently heighten the requirements that they then in turn impose on developers of sites disturbing more than 1 acre. So towns all across Eastern Mass are doing these bylaw amendments at Springtown meeting. So most of the heightened requirements can actually be dealt with by amending the regulations that the planning board has adopted to implement this stormwater management and erosion control bylaw. But there are a few changes that need to be made to the bylaw. And so again, this bylaw covers new development and redevelopment projects that disturb an acre or more of land. So those are relatively big projects. These are projects that almost all of them are already subject to some other type of permitting requirement from the planning board or the Conservation Commission. So this is just, these requirements get wrapped into that. So without imposing an extra kind of permitting and red tape burden on the applicant, it nonetheless ensures that these larger sites have heightened requirements for stormwater management and to make sure that they don't cause impacts to the town storm drain system or to surface water bodies, make sure that they have, state-of-the-art stormwater management. So the changes that we're recommending be made to the bylaw, the significant ones are removing the exemption for projects subject to wetlands permitting. The exemption was put in there because projects subject to wetlands permitting, if the exemption applies to projects subject to wetlands permitting that also receive stormwater review as part of that wetlands permitting. With the previous MS4 permit, the standards that those projects were held to as part of wetlands permitting was sufficient to meet the requirements imposed on the town by the MS4 permit. That's no longer the case. EPA is now requiring the town to go above and beyond the Massachusetts stormwater standards and wetlands regs in terms of what the town has to require of these larger projects. So therefore, those projects can no longer be exempt, even if they're already getting stormwater review before the Conservation Commission. We're recommending that the stormwater bylaw be amended so that every project, every new development or redevelopment project disturbing more than an acre will all have to go before the planning board. So they're all across the board subject to these heightened standards. The other significant requirements are, to add a specific low impact development requirement that those low impact development site design processes, site design approaches and other more specific stormwater control approaches are included unless they're infeasible. That's a new requirement of the MS4 permit. A couple definitions that weren't included in the old permit but are now in the new MS4 permit. We're suggesting that the existing definitions be revised to match those definitions that are now in the permit. And then finally, one additional thing that we are recommending that I know is something that the planning board wants to do, but this isn't required by the MS4 permit, but it's a good engineering practice and I think is a good thing for the town, is to add a provision allowing the planning board to specify the precipitation data set that applicants use. So when they're doing the stormwater modeling about what certain design storms look like, instead of using this really outdated data set that Mass DEP still requires because they just sort of haven't updated their regulations. Instead, the planning board can require a more the current best engineering practice data set, which there are a couple out there that I think are considered good practice, but one is considered the NOAA Atlas 14 is a set of data set regarding kind of what storms look like now. We're seeing more intense storms more frequently, and requiring applicants to use that data set will ensure that stormwater management measures are appropriately sized so they don't have, unwanted downstream impacts and, by being overwhelmed by these larger storms. So those are the significant requirements, the significant amendments that we're suggesting. And I guess lastly, we did include a provision that makes clear when the cutoff date is in terms of which projects these amended provisions would apply to. It's any project for which a full stormwater permit application or wetlands notice of intent is submitted by October 1st would not be subject to the amended bylaw provision. So to try to make things, make things very clear and predictable for project proponents. So that's kind of a brief overview of what we're recommending in terms of amendments, and you know where that's coming from. And I'll say that we, my office has worked with town staff, from planning, conservation commission, assistant town administrator, other town staff, to come up with these, with the wording of these proposed revisions. So this is sort of, we're now at the point of presenting this draft to your board, to the planning board and the conservation commission to get another round of comments. And then we'll do hopefully a more final iteration of what the language will look like. So at this point, I'm just coming before you all to give you that overview and to take questions and to just ask that this article be placed on the warrant sort of as a placeholder with the exact wording to come down the road. So I guess that, any questions?
Excellent.
May I ask one?
Certainly.
Regarding the data set, there's no like requirement that it's like, you know, generally accepted. If they want to use the Amazon rainforest basin, right? Like, what's to stop the planning board from doing that? You know, is there any guardrails on which sets they can pick?
Let's see.
It just says the rules and regulations may specify the precipitation estimates to be used, and it says that the planning board can adopt like the standards.
We could change that to say
regional or something like
or
that.
generally accepted
Appropriate.
or yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Because you mentioned NOAA, right? That's kind of the
Yeah, the NOAA Atlas 14 is either that or the Cornell. I'm not
modeling
Cornell data set would be. I think my understanding is that it would be one of those two that the planning board would be likely to adopt. But yes, I'll come up with some language that makes clear that it should be a widely accepted data sets, such as, well, I don't think I want to say such as in something that's in the bylaw, but I'll come up with some language that limits it to something that would be
appropriate for the region or something like that.
Yeah.
And I believe, Rebecca, you had also said that while it would potentially happen after our town meeting, that state may solidify on a modeling method, which then in regulations would allow the planning board to incorporate that rather than coming back to town meeting.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, DEP has been, it's expected that DEP will adopt NOAA Atlas 14. So I could consistent. I could think about additional language that says, specifies something about consistent with. Well, I don't want to say consistent with state agency requirements because right now DEP has really outdated data set. But anyway, yes, it is expected that DEP will adopt the NOAA Atlas 14 data set, and I think the planning board would be likely to then want to adopt the same that same data set.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board? No. Okay, so thank you, Rebecca, for the work on this. And if there's no further questions or comments, so the planning board's going to be looking at this as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we can take our time and take another look at it based on the brief discussion that was here tonight, and we'll follow up and take another look at this before it's finalized.
Sounds good.
All right, great, excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time.
We appreciate you here, Rebecca.
Yeah.
We'd all be in the weeds, so thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
My pleasure, truly.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Okay, next on the agenda is item 8C, fiscal year 22 capital budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Finance Committee met the week before last and made two additional recommendations to the capital budget. One was the middle school paging system for $43,000, and the other was the Shaker Lane school paging system for $18,500. And those were the only two that they made that were the select board did not recommend.
Okay. Okay,
Madam Chair, can I just jump in real quick and ask
sure.
Cheryl, did they have any justification for justifying the 43,000 and the 18,500 respectively?
Yeah, so they did have a representative from the school department come on. Steve Mark was unavailable, so Justin did come on and speak to the age of those systems. And I believe it was Shaker Lane that was basically on its last legs and not really repairable. And speaking, they're kind of all one paging system. So, you know, and speaking with the school representative, it made sense to replace both paging systems so that they're on the same type of paging system.
Okay.
Then we do a full rehab of Shaker Lane and we do a new building or something like that. And it's only 18,500, but it's 18,500, you know, so I think some of the reasons we were holding off on that was because of the uncertainties of what's going to happen with Shaker Lane. I mean, we just authorized the letter of interest for the state funding, you know, for the MSBA. So I don't know. Again, it's only 18,500, and if you recommend that we take the advice of the FinCom, then that's good enough for me. But there was a reason that we kind of dug in on it and pushed back. So,
Chuck, I think they also considered that even if the school building authority did accept Shaker Lane, that there was still years to go before something would happen. So, you know.
Yeah, I mean, conceivably, what would be the time frame on that project?
probably 5 years out.
Yeah.
5 years out, right? So, I mean, it makes sense to me based on the recommendation.
Still doesn't make sense to me, but if the recommendation comes back from FinCom or from Cheryl to do it, then I'll go forward with it. But
Right.
I still, there's a reason that we dug in and said, not this year, you know, I understand the reasoning for wanting to have everybody on the same system, but they've been able to get by without it all being on the same system. So there was a reason we pushed back.
Right. Okay. Any other questions from the board, comments from the board on this? No? Okay. Thank you, Cheryl.
You're welcome.
So is it, Cheryl, is it your recommendation then that we move forward with it? And sorry, I sat down. And that we vote to approve the FinCom's capital budget totaling 1.571,500?
FinCom's recommendation, I think that the more, not necessarily staff's recommendation, but what this would
Putting her
just,
in a bad,
yeah, this would just allow us to solidify, to get that article crafted.
Cheryl's like, yeah, so it's FinCom's recommendation. Okay. Do we have
I love the show.
any other questions or comments, Mr. DeCoste?
Seeing that Mr. Glavy's not here, if you would like a motion, Madam Chair, I will read it for you.
Please.
Move that the select board vote to approve the FinCom's recommendation of fiscal year 22 capital budget totaling $1,571,500.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. DeCoste?
Really gonna go with me first, huh?
You're there. You're just there. Yeah. All right.
I'll support the recommendation.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Nordhaus?
Aye.
Mr. Knox?
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye.
But I reserve the right to change my vote.
But you'll have that
Wait.
opportunity, Chuck.
I know I will.
When I'm recommending the articles, you can.
I know I will.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you. Thank you, Cheryl.
Thanks, Cheryl.
So, Madam
Okay,
Chair,
next,
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
The next item is the insert of these articles that's in the packet. A lot of these are, again, yearly budget articles. Some of them we have talked about. If you want to take another look at that and push this off now that we move town meeting, we can do that.
I would like to do that, Mr.
Okay.
Insaldi. I have a list of some additional, just minor administrative articles that we might want to include with respect to bylaws and certain language in the documents.
We appreciate the delay and pushing this off too.
Okay.
We'd rather not call it a delay. We'd rather call it the diligence and making sure that we get it right.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Exactly. Okay, good. So next on the agenda, town administrator, assistant town administrator update.
So the first one, Madam Chair, is the intermunicipal agreement with Boxborough for LCTV. We're going to table that to the next meeting. There are some changes that needed to be worked out. So we'll table the first one. The second one is the intermunicipal agreement between Boxborough and Littleton for animal control officer services. This is annually. We renew this contract. We did discuss it with Chief Panad. He's fine with this agreement. Every year it just goes up a little bit, and it's really just for adjusting for staff when they calculate staff's rate of pay. That's why it triggers that little bump up. So this is this year's assessment at $30,029 for Littleton.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the board on that agreement? Okay, so I think we're ready for motion.
Okay. Apologize for my absence. My back went into open rebellion after sitting in that chair for a couple hours.
Oh, no.
Had to get up and stretch it out. Yeah. So anyway, I will move that the select board vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 4A, to authorize execution of an intermunicipal agreement with the town of Boxborough for provision by Boxborough of animal control officer services to Littleton with the term from July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2022 at a cost of $30,029.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Mr. Glavy,
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus,
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste,
Mr. DeCosta's aye.
and Cindy Napoli is aye. The motion is approved as written. And next on the agenda, the Finance Committee Reserve Fund Policy.
Yeah, Madam Chair, thank you. This is another great pickup by Cheryl. And right now, Littleton actually didn't have a reserve fund policy. So Cheryl has crafted one. I'm sure she spent word for word, Cheryl crafted from scratch, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I'm just going to turn it over to Cheryl to explain what we're doing here.
Okay.
Thank you, Anthony. So, as it was mentioned previously when we talked about, moving funds from capital to finance committee, there were some, comments about how do we, address whether people need things in a quick turnaround time. So, as Anthony mentioned, when I looked back, I saw that we didn't actually have a policy. So I thought we'd use this opportunity to create a comprehensive policy and address some of the concerns that were raised. So that's what you have in your packets. It is a standard policy that other communities do utilize and follows best practices. The section specifically that I have in the policy in bold is the where I was trying to address those emergency requests that department heads might have and need a more expeditious source of funding. And so it just talks about once we receive those requests, within 24 hours, myself and Anthony would turn that around to select board and finance committee so we could post a meeting and take action on them 48 hours after that. That being said, if somebody needs something immediately, they still have their operating budget that they can utilize. Certainly, if they need to have something fixed quickly, they can have it fixed quickly. And, if we have to vote the transfer after, then we vote the transfer after. So if it's something of a critical nature, certainly this process would not hold that up.
Okay.
We just don't want them to take advantage of that.
Correct.
We trust that we have the right people in place that won't do that.
Right. Obviously, Chuck, they come to us and we've made sure that that it's something that is necessary and it is an emergency.
Or if we knew we couldn't grab a quorum or something
Yes,
like that.
that we would get the ball moving, notify both the select board and FinCom of what's going on, and that we'll need the formal vote at the next meeting for each board.
So I will say that Finance Committee is discussing this at their meeting tomorrow night. So I, up to this point, have not received any feedback or comments from them on the policy. So I'm not sure after their discussion if they'll have any changes. But we are
premature to take a vote on it then? Is that what you're suggesting?
I would say so. Yeah, I would wait until they review in the event they have any substantial changes to it.
Okay.
I believe that when we discussed this last time, I think that Chief Wazinski was concerned about the timeliness of the funds. I'm curious if he's seen this or he's offered any opinion on it.
To Cheryl's point earlier, though, Matthew, it's really not an issue. If something happens with an apparatus, or we can get that fixed immediately. We're not going to wait in a situation of an emergency. We're going to get it fixed, and then we'll explain why we needed to take the action we did. So
no harm in circulating this draft in any event for whatever input they may have.
Sure.
Yeah, get their buy-in early too.
Yeah.
I think it's important for them to know there's going to be a different operating procedure, and it just gives us an extra check and balance to make sure that those funds are not being used in less than an emergency capacity.
Mm-hmm.
Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I support this, and I appreciate Cheryl's work, especially, and Anthony bringing this to our attention. But for the listening public who might have heard it otherwise, it's not like we were flying without any guidance here. State law does actually spell out what you can and can't do with reserve fund, and we did have an established practice. We just did not have a written procedure like this. But so it's needed and welcome. But it's not like we were running renegade.
No.
Thank you for clarifying that, Mr. Clevey.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. All right, great. Thank you, Cheryl. Thanks for your work on this.
You're welcome.
And next on the agenda, Mr. Insaldi.
Sure, Madam Chair. We're going to talk about the TRED Trust Fund. We have a letter in your packet from Town Council. They reviewed the 2020 annual town meeting, Article 6. And if you recall, that's the funds that were received by the insurance company from resulting from the financial situation we had going on a couple of years ago with some money missing. So at that time, I think Steve Venuti came to the board and asked and said that putting this in the TRED fund, the board took action and went to town meeting. Lo and behold, a year later, as we're reviewing things, we find out that you can't do that and you can't deposit public funds into the TRED account. The TRED account is supposed to be for donations. So, and Cheryl, feel free to jump in if I'm misspeaking something, but so what we're basically looking for now is to take the money out of the TRED account and move it to the general fund.
Okay.
Could I ask one clarifying question about the letter? So there's a statement in there that Mr. Venuti was supposed to, or had stated he was going to set up a second trust, but didn't. If I'm reading this right, though, that doesn't matter. Whether or not he set up that trust, the money would need to be returned. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay. On a larger note, I think the fact that the town voted to put that money into the fund indicates that everyone's concerned about taxes on our seniors. And I hope we can get Mr. Arciero here soon so that we can discuss the means-based. That seems like the best way to go, given that we can't give any money to anybody directly.
Well, we can still give, what do you mean give money to?
Well, we can offer, abatements, and we can offer, a time spent working in order to offset, or we can offer donations, but we can't take any taxpayer money and give it as relief.
No, but we do have a pretty robust try to count balance regardless from donations. So there's still money there that we can offer to the seniors for relief. So we just need to broaden the scope of the requirements for that funding through the legislation that was passed for the town of Westford. So we're working to get Representative Arciero here at our next meeting to talk more about that. Okay, so we're going to vote to move this to the general fund for now.
There's not another reserve fund that we should send it to, or?
I think at this point, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, at this point, we would just have to send it to the general fund. If we wanted to reappropriate it to something else, we could craft yet another warrant article to do that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we're ready for motion?
Sure. I move that the select board vote to authorize transfer of $149,614.88 from the TRED Trust Fund to the general fund.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste?
DeCoste is aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye, and the motion is approved as written. Thank you, Cheryl. Again, thank you for your hard work.
You're welcome.
Okay, and so now we are on to meeting minutes.
We have one set of meeting minutes for the February 22nd meeting. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to look them over. Any corrections, amendments, etc.?
I just have a couple of nitpicky typos. The top of page 2 of the minutes, regional is misspelled.
Good. I saw a couple of grammatical things too, but I didn't bother to change
Yeah,
them.
okay.
But it's fine to do so.
And then at the top of page 8 under the sewer update, I think there's a missing word. It says replace that sum, and then the sentence ends. So maybe at some point or at some time should have been in there.
Which page is this now?
That's on page 8 of the minutes. I can look and find out what page of the packet it is.
Topic, it's under the sewer discussion.
Yeah. It's a 2-8. It's the second to last page of the packet at the very top.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
It's in the first sentence. It says, is 20 years old and will have to be replaced at some.
Yeah, at some point in time, in the near future, right? At least that was the intent, as I recall it.
Yep.
Okay.
With that amendment.
Pretty nitpicky.
Okay, no, that shows you reading them. That's good. So with those two amendments, we all set otherwise?
Yep.
And move that the select board vote to approve the regular session meeting minutes of February 22nd, 2021 as amended.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. DeCoste?
DeCoste is aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Aye.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
Mr. Knox?
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye. So the minutes of the meeting have been approved as amended. Thank you. And that is the last item on our agenda for this evening. We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion to adjourn has been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. DeCoste?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Yes.
Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye. And that concludes our meeting for this evening. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Yep. Good night, all. Good meeting.